Oh, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and it is time once again to talk about professional wrestling for a little while here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application. Thank you very much for joining me this week. And, the same typical ordeal that we're going to go through with every start of every podcast is I'm going to like you, yes, and I'm going to like you more if you leave a like on this video, great save, Warren, or if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify, then I'll really like you more. And my podcast will like you more because then that means that the algorithms will know that you like it, and will make sure that it ends up in more inboxes and feeds and whatnot, so that more and more people can enjoy what I have to say about professional wrestling. So why not give them that gift this holidays and like my stuff and join the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord and follow me on Blue Sky at MrWarrenHayes.show and all that good stuff. But right now, we've got ourselves a podcast to get to. We've got some stuff to talk about this week. And a lot of the topics this week are things, it's very ranty, just things that I have seen go by where I'm like, man, I have to talk a little bit about this. It's like, look, I take the opportunity to talk about something stupid Mark Henry said, and then, and then lead it into a few thoughts about the future generations of pro wrestling and when are we going to start pushing the new guys. Becky Lynch looked like a goof in the War Games match at WWE Survivor Series War Games a couple of days ago. I took the time to sort of think and ponder on, well, what has happened to Becky Lynch, essentially, right? And we're also going to put a pin, not a pin. We're gonna put a period. We're gonna finish off all this discourse about the Hiroshi Tanahashi main event at the Tokyo Dome, the opponent, the stuff. That I'm throwing words together and hopefully they sound like a sentence. And we're also we've also got Andrade news. Look, this is what the show looks like this week. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for being here. Let's get to it. We're going to talk about Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kazuchika Okada again, but not. We're going to talk about it in a way that is going to feel like a punctuation mark, like we're closing a book, where we're going to clear some stuff out, and this is all based off of an article that was published on the Social Suplex newsletter. Just a couple of days ago, very lengthy article by Trish Spears, friend of the show, has been on the show from the Trish and Sarah podcast, which is endorsed by Warren Hayes. And Trish did, okay, first and foremost, we're not going to read the entire article. It is a long, lengthy article that Trish wrote, and it is not, this is not a bad thing. She wrote a splendid piece of work, a truly great long form pro wrestling / sports article. And cheers to her. Trish did a fantastic job. We're not going to read all of it because, it's a bedtime story. No, but it'll take forever and it's not great content. But I did zero in on some points that we had been talking about over the past couple of weeks. Few streams and on the podcast and whatnot. In regards to what exactly happened, how did the Okada pick come together as Tanahashi's final opponent for his retirement match at Wrestle Kingdom 20 in about a month? Because look, as you may recall, and even if you just hang out online a little bit, this has been a very twisty story. It's not all that twisted, but it's a very twisty story with a lot of versions, a lot of hearsay, a lot of this and that. And Trish, God bless her, not only tried to make sense out of all of this, but put together the most compelling and, I would dare say, accurate timeline of events based on things that have been published by reports and her digging into her own New Japan contacts to try and get the bigger, broader picture of how exactly all of this came together. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, because her article goes in depth into the depth of the history between all of the opponents that were suggested and what kind of meaning it would have brought to fans had it been this guy or that guy, and so on and so forth. I will be giving you analysis on the stuff that we want answers on, but ultimately you should all read this article because it is legitimately tremendous, right? It is absolutely tremendous. So first and foremost, Trish starts breaking down exactly when did all these negotiations start happening between AEW and New Japan, but also with WWE, right? So this is what she said in regards to, this is what she wrote in regards to the talks with Okada. Negotiations between New Japan and Okada's management team began several months before the match was announced, with the Anjo date, which is the date that he returned to challenge unexpectedly Hiroshi Tanahashi in the ring, just long ago in November. With the Anjo date where he returned being booked in mid-September. Tony Khan, speaking on the Full Gear press call, said that the idea was first brought up between Tanahashi and himself when the New Japan president visited AEW during Double or Nothing weekend in May. Both Japanese-based sources and those in America close to Okada have indicated that it was made clear to him that Tanahashi wanted Okada to do the match, believing it would allow him to have the strongest match that he could have with his current physical condition. And that is something that I have put forward when we last talked about this whole ordeal, saying essentially that Okada was probably the best opponent, because broken down Tanahashi these days needs someone, at the top of their game to be able to guide him along, and Okada was absolutely the man for this. Our primary source in Japan was informed that Okada was the man for the spot by mid-October and reaffirmed the belief a week later, with the deal being signed much closer to the date of the announcement. So basically, even as we got closer to the date that was booked, there was still uncertainty. There was still stuff being thrown around, and we hadn't settled on a date yet, which explains at the same time why there was so much, what's the word I'm looking for? Where there were so many discrepancies in media where, one media outlet would say this, the other would say something not necessarily contradictory, but would, challenge what was being said, and so on and so forth. It was volatile. That's the word I was looking for. The reports in the media regarding Tanahashi's final opponent were a little volatile at the time, and this explains why. This absolutely explains why. Let's go down a little further here in the article. When you read the above, you would believe that the timeline for putting together the match at the Tokyo Dome began in late May in Glendale, Arizona, the location of Double or Nothing, but that is simply not the case. Indeed, Kazuchika Okada was not the first name on the list when it came to potential opponents for Tanahashi on January 4th, with WWE's Shinsuke Nakamura being their top target from the outset. You read that right, folks. You read that right. In the week that Tanahashi wrestled Shibata in an exhibition match at the Tokyo Dome, we were told that the New Japan office were discussing approaching WWE to see if Nakamura would be a possibility for January 4th, 2026. The 45-year-old who departed New Japan for America in the spring of 2016 was the only name in consideration at that point, according to our source, who also informed us in the same conversation that Hiroki Goto would be winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in Osaka. As it turns out, we were not the only outlet to receive such information, with several not only being informed of New Japan's intentions to approach WWE, but also that contact had been established between the two promotions by the end of January, with one source claiming to a non-American outlet to have seen details of said communication. So, just to make sure we're all following here, Okada was not, the discussions with Okada started in May. And before that, New Japan had formulated intentions to reach out to WWE to see if, like as early as January of 2025, reach out to WWE to see if Shinsuke Nakamura was going to be available. Things went quiet on the matter until April, when there was news that Jeff Cobb would be leaving New Japan to head to WWE. Cobb had been in talks with the American promotion since early March and had agreed to sign with Stamford later on in the month. In information we were able to corroborate at the time with Voices of Wrestling, it was agreed by all parties that he work the Dontaku Tour, ending with an IWGP Heavyweight title match with Hiroki Goto on May 5th. Cobb began cutting promos for it backstage at Windy City Riot on April 11, but was pulled by WWE the next week, wrestling his final match for the promotion against Hiroshi Tanahashi on April 19. United Empire stablemate Callum Newman ended up replacing him in the title match. At the time, the information we had led to the conclusion of this being another example of WWE pushing their weight about when it comes to not allowing talent they are signing to finish out previous obligations with promotions. After all, there has been other recent examples of similar conduct with the like of Ricky Starks and Stephanie Vicaire. However, an alternative narrative formed in the summer with two credible sources confirming us that Cobb's early departure was part of negotiations for Nakamura between the two promotions, and that was information they had been supplied with at the same time as this situation was ongoing. It is something we have not been able to confirm independently at this time. So this explains a lot of things, right? And actually sort of throws a pipe wrench, well, just a plain old wrench, not just a pipe wrench, it's a good old fashioned wrench, into whatever theories or thoughts that we had at the time in regards to Jeff Cobb being pulled from his New Japan dates, where we were just like, oh, it's WWE throwing its weight around, right? Which made perfect sense. But now it turns out that WWE was like, hey, you know what? We'll be the nice guys here, and we'll let Jeff Cobb leave early. You need him early? Okay, he'll be off early. Thank you. Just keep us in mind, right? Remember, Shinsuke Nakamura, January 4th, 2026. Keep that in mind. Are we surprised that WWE didn't honor this? No, of course we're not. Did you see, like, this whole political thing ended up with Callum Newman being the guy challenging for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, and everyone thought it was weird. But we all assumed that it was just WWE throwing its weight around. Insane. The most consistent story, in terms of multiple outlets having been given the same information, is that Nakamura had asked to be released from his contract during the summer, and that WWE had agreed to the request, allowing him to fulfill the match without any political issues with AEW or CMLL. Now, this, you will recall, I think, I don't know if it's in this bit here that I highlighted, but Trish mentions in this article that that Wade Keller, remember this during the summer, that Wade Keller had reported that Shinsuke that Shinsuke's contract would probably be done by the end of the year, which I think is that's the kindling to the entire Shinsuke Nakamura working Tanahashi's retirement. I think that's the kindling before everything caught on fire, because I think there was a lot of people, including myself, that were on contract watch for Nakamura, where we were like, he just might be gone, right? He just might be gone. And Nakamura, turns out, well, I mean, this is probably where the story came from. He asked for his release this summer, right? Now, what did WWE TKO do with this situation? Let's find out. After the shows at Ryogoku Sumo Hall, TKO WWE had stepped in and informed all parties that this would be no longer the case. The early release. However, Nakamura could still work the match under conditional approval. Confirmation of a clause in Nakamura's contract that would allow him to do as much was confirmed by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter the following week, having been discussed previously in 2023 when he returned to Pro Wrestling Noah on January 1st of that year to work the Great Muta final match, not the Kaiji Muto retirement match, but the Great Muta's final match. The potential rescinding after the match had begun to be teased at events in Japan and through New Japan's most friendly media channels has been put down to TKO WWE wanting to mess with Tony Khan as much as it would be to disrupt New Japan. Oh, what? What? I can't fathom such behavior. So you see, you understand what the play is here, right, folks? You understand what the play is here. That they were going to be on and off with this contract thing, saying, oh, maybe he can. Well, he might be released. Oh, no, he won't be released, but he does have a clause in his contract that would allow him to work the match, but we have to give the okay, and we're just not ready to give the okay yet. Like, they're fucking with New Japan. And in the for the express desire to just create tension between New Japan and AEW. And I would argue it worked. I would argue that New Japan fans, more than ever, cannot stand AEW or Tony Khan. And I would probably also, put forward that there are some staff in New Japan that, they're pretty done with AEW and New Japan and AEW and Tony Khan as well. And some of them might have been very vocal during a highly watched televised wrestling event about a year ago, right? Just a little under a year ago. Anyway, let's keep going. It feels somewhat short-sighted in that there is arguably far more long-term value in attempting to build a relationship with New Japan for WWE rather than making things more difficult for the Japanese promotion. What we also don't know is what other conditions and asks there were from WWE around the match taking place, especially if the deal had essentially been altered by a great degree already at that point. The expectation is, probably rightfully, that it would not have ended at just an okay for Nakamura to be part of the match. WWE have denied to Fightful that the match had ever been broached, but with everything we have seen up until this point, it feels extremely unlikely this was the case. So a little editorializing here by our girl Trish, but she's absolutely right. I think at this point, WWE is saying, no, we never really discussed the match. I think at this point it's a crock of shit. It was a crock of shit even before I read the article. I always felt it was I didn't buy it. And after reading the article, I don't buy it either. And the thing that I find interesting here, right? The thing that I find really, really interesting is like she ponders, the question, what were the other asks, right? What else was WWE demanding from New Japan? Because it wouldn't just, like she says, knowing WWE, it could not have been just a simple, sure, here you go, just send them back before this date and everything's fine. That's not how these people work. I sat down and without a question would have made more demands, more requests, something else. You can let your imagination run wild. I know I have. It's all speculation. We'll never know, probably. Not unless someone spills the beans on everything that was being requested. But the expectation is probably rightfully that it would not have ended at just an okay for Nakamura to be part of the match. No way, no how. What WWE are absolutely aware of, though, is that there would be political implications of a WWE wrestler essentially main eventing the biggest Tokyo Dome show in 2 decades. There would be no issue from partner promotions if he was to participate in the match as a free agent. But him still being under contract does immediately change the circumstances around putting the match together in the current political environment. It is this that would be a fundamental sticking point that would not be overcome. Sources in New Japan, including one higher up, have told multiple members of the Social Suplex Network, as well as other outlets, that Tony Khan was made aware of the change in Nakamura's status at this point. We have been wary of some descriptions we have received from New Japan sources when it comes to Tony Khan this year, being that we had a first-hand denial of a non-reported story concerning him during the Wrestle Dynasty event. However, look at Trish go, look at her go. That's off of my own heart. I love that. However, whilst we did receive more colorful descriptions of his reaction to the Nakamura news, it is fair to say that all agree that he was not happy about the prospect that there were communications with New Japan around it at this point. And this is exactly, as opined a little higher up, this is exactly what WWE wanted to do, wanted to create friction between New Japan and AEW. And they succeeded. And I knew about this. I have buddies that are insiders. I know people who know people. And the people who know people would chat about it. And this incredible resentment that exists from that exists for Tony Khan that only seemed to grow during this period is a direct byproduct of WWE fucking around with one of AEW's premier partners. And again, like I said at the time when all was extremely speculative, can you blame Tony Khan for being upset at this? You can't. You cannot blame Tony Khan for being upset that his business partner is talking with his number one competitor, who is not only just a competitor, but someone who is actively looking to stamp him out of existence. I have no issues with Tony Khan being pissed. In fact, the opposite would have been shocking. Of course he's going to be upset. What are we doing here? But Tony was unhappy. Let's move on. No outlet that we are aware of has reported that Tony Khan shut the match down in regards to Shinsuke versus Tanahashi, right? Which is again a rumor that had been going around that even I had heard. No outlet that we were aware of has reported that Tony Khan shut the match down. Rather, the line is that New Japan were made aware that there would be, quote unquote, serious repercussions. Now, she put this in quotes. So this is probably something she heard like firsthand or saw this from something very, very solid, so that Trish would put this in quotes. So, serious repercussions to the relationship between the two promotions if the deal was still to be made with Nakamura whilst under WWE contract, as well as a firm push for Okada to be the opponent at the Tokyo Dome. So he didn't, again, like I said, right? He didn't shut down the match, but he had every reason to be upset, Tony Khan. Every reason to be upset. It is also something which should not come as a surprise. After all, AEW are in a global cold war with WWE, where their competitor is looking for every way they can to undermine the younger brand, whether in the US or further afield. The WWE acts of aggression have also gone past being just towards AEW this year as well, with the purchase of AAA, meaning a more direct challenge to CMLL in Mexico, who have been a partner for New Japan Pro Wrestling for much longer than AEW have. Some may treat these details as salacious, but they shouldn't. They are a representation of the difficulties faced when it comes to sustaining relationships between promotions that all have different goals, business strategies, and challenges to contend with. That's probably the most reasonable. This is probably the most reasonable description of how complicated these relationships are between these promotions, these partner promotions that are all working together. Good job, Trish. So if we move a little further here, now we get back into like the decision here. Dave Meltzer, writing in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, summarized the situation rather aptly in that, quote, whether the snag was negotiations with WWE, a decision to go with Okada since he was the bigger name and greater Tanahashi rival, or pressure from AEW or loyalty to AEW about using a WWE wrestler is not clear. The likelihood, unquote, that was the quote. The likelihood is that it was a combination of a number of these factors that saw them all end up with the decision that they did, ergo choosing Okada. And I agree with Trish here again. The answer lies in the ensemble of all these decisions. You know, whether it was WWE playing hard to get, whether it was the deciding to go with Okada because he's a bigger name than Nakamura, or pressure from AEW, or loyalty to AEW, or just we're using a WWE wrestler. It might not be just one of those things. It's probably a combination of all those five. It's a very tenuous, very, very tenuous situation, right? Now, there were two other names that were in these discussions as well, outside of Nakamura and Okada. The two other names were Tetsuya Naito and Kenny Omega. Now, of course, we all know Naito departed New Japan earlier this year. And there was some speculation around the Naito stuff, but I didn't buy it. I wasn't into it. I didn't think it was, especially since, Naito has a tendency to, when he talks publicly, like there's a lot of working in his stuff. He's not, he rarely shoots. There's a lot of work in what he says when he talks publicly, when he chats with Tokyo Sports and all of that. You always have to grain of salt everything he says. So I wasn't quite sure. I didn't buy it, but apparently there was some seriousness to it. Let's read. Speculation around Naito was at its height in September when the wrestler was in Hokkaido for quote-unquote meetings at the same time as the promotion were touring the prefecture. Naito has only made in-ring appearances for European promotions Revolution Pro Wrestling and WXW so far since his departure, with both having an established working relationship with New Japan. Parentheses, Naito's post-New Japan life, or his post-New Japan career has been an absolute bust. His tone around this point in September, right, also began to soften around New Japan, with him telling Tokyo Sports that there is no other company in Japan he will ever wrestle for. Whether a meeting occurred in Hokkaido between New Japan and Tetsuya Naito, we have been unable to confirm. However, Naito himself has confirmed that talks took place between the two sides where they determined his interest in the spot, though through indirect contact. The wrestler told Note in the aftermath of the Okada announcement that he would have accepted the opportunity if he had been asked officially, but no further contact was made before Okada was announced. So essentially, Naito, may or may not have had meetings in Hokkaido, but he says himself that he did talk with New Japan, that there was interest to have him, right? But no one asked him officially to be part of the match, and he would have accepted it, and then they ghosted him. He didn't hear a peep from them, completely ghosted until they announced Okada was doing the thing. Isn't that wild, chat? Just like absolute bonkers revelation. If true, of course. The fact Naito was ghosted after the initial contact is something else. With previous occurrence with New Japan, and especially this year where two prominent AEW wrestlers had agreed to work the G1 before communication was cut off, with confirmation of their non-participation only really coming with the lineup announcements. This is something I don't think anyone knew. I didn't know this. That there were two AEW wrestlers who were supposed to be in the G1, and they only found out that they were not going to be in the G1 once the fields were announced. Crazy shit. That being said, this is not the first time that New Japan does it. From what I understand, New Japan is not the greatest at communication. In that instance, it is likely that a lack of funds was responsible for the decision, and that the lack of communication was down to somewhat Japanese business cultural practices of not wanting to disappoint directly. Okie dokie. I 100% buy the lack of money issue. I can't tell you guys, gals, and non-binary pals enough that New Japan financially is not doing well. I cannot stress that enough. It is fair to say, though, that even telling people the most basic information has not been New Japan's strong point this year, or multiple years. The situation did nothing for the feelings of Tetsuya Naito towards the company, seemingly, who declared he now had no strong reason to return to New Japan at this point. So anyway, it is worth keeping in mind, though, that the ungovernable one always has an element of work in everything he says. So you see, he had a reason to go back, which would have been to retire Hiroshi Tanahashi. But now that he's not doing it, he's like, I got no reason to go back now. Just as simple as that. Let's talk about this guy now. Omega was more of the real quote-unquote pipe dream out of any of the four, with the Winnipeg-born wrestler restricted in regards to singles competition so far this year by the management of his ongoing health issues. So there's really I don't think there's any more interesting tidbits to glean out of that when it comes to Omega. And I think that's the end of my highlighted stuff. But Omega was on the table. It's just it's just a question. Omega was on the table, but he wasn't. There was a lot of trepidation around him possibly doing the match and having another singles match here. A lot of people, I guess in AEW weren't quite keen on him. With his health restrictions now moving forward. Weren't exactly excited at the idea of him going to have a massive 30 plus minute singles classic with Tanahashi, right? Trish breaks down the story, the history, and the logic. that would have made Omega as a choice be absolutely okay as well. And you can absolutely read that. So these were the main talking points that I wanted to bring up. These are the main talking points I wanted to bring up because these are all like very, very interesting news items that confirm a lot of things that I had been talking about that I had heard and were very unpopular opinions, that people didn't like the idea that AEW ran some kind of, that AEW ran some kind of interference to keep, to prevent a Nakamura showing up. But WWE ran their own type of interference, and they probably just played everyone for fools in this one here just to create tension between the business partners, which it successfully did end up doing. Let's be honest, like that. This is exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened in this situation. The road to get to this main event was extremely messy. Now, I guess my final thought on this is the following. What was New Japan Pro Wrestling thinking about reaching out to WWE and do business with them? What was on their fucking mind when they decided to pick up the phone and call and ask for Shinsuke Nakamura for one night only? What? At this stage, TKO is in a spot where it does not want to play nice with anyone. It wants to gobble up or smash. And it's the UFC model. And these are all UFC guys. So why are we pretending like this is something that might have happened? AAA only exists today because WWE purchased them. This relationship with TNA that everyone thinks is such a great thing for TNA, we all know how it's going to end. We all know how it's going to finish. Why did New Japan think that they could just ask a favor and we'll pay you back? Trish even underscores it in her article where she says, maybe there were other requests that were made by WWE. We don't know. Of course, that makes sense. It makes absolute sense. It makes 100% sense. It makes so much sense that they'd sit down and say, well, we'll let you have them, but we want 25% of the shares of Bushiroad or whatever the fuck. Something where you're like, no, we just want a wrestler for a match. And the even wilder part is that New Japan did this while being close business partners with AEW, who are at war with WWE. That's not a secret to anyone. They are in a battle to stay alive in an environment where WWE holds all the media cards and the business partners, and they're like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe Tony will understand. Tony was right to be upset. Now, I will give the New Japan a benefit of the doubt card. I will slide that over to them. And here you go. I'll give you this. Maybe they were just calling WWE to see if Shinsuke was indeed, was going to be released or how much time he has left on his contract. Maybe that's all they wanted to know, right? Maybe they were just going in because they heard the rumors. Maybe someone talked to someone and they're like, well, I heard that his contract's coming up this year. Oh, really? Let's give him a call to see. But then what does that do? It tips your hand. And when you have a bunch of, bloodthirsty sharks who are out there like TKO and DC are like, oh, well, you want to know if his contract is going to be up? Why? Oh, because you want him for a match? Oh, well, okay. And maybe, as the article seems to allude to, it seems like WWE was on the path of granting his request, Shinsuke's request of getting his release from the company, but they removed that off the table because they're fucking assholes. Because New Japan called them just to inquire, just to see, doing things above board. And then not New Japan, but WWE, unable to see as anything in this type of situation as them taking a big fat L, decided to bench Nakamura longer just because they had heard he could be in a big time Tokyo Dome match without them. So they're like, fuck that. If he's going to be in the biggest Tokyo Dome main event of the past 2 decades, it's going to be under the WWE banner. You see how they are? You see how these motherfuckers are? Great stuff, by the way, by our girl Trish and Sarah podcast, of course, but I highly recommend reading this article. It is a great piece of work. She should be extremely proud of herself. It's legitimately great stuff. And by the way, the stuff that she brings up, my insider buddies all go, yeah, that checks out. Like no one in the dark spheres of wrestling discussion are challenging what she's laying down here. Everyone's going, yeah, it checks out. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it's what I heard. Great piece of work. If you are listening to the podcast right now, I will link the article in the description. Other than that, I will post it on socials as soon as we're done here on stream. Mark Henry, of course, speaking on the Busted Open podcast, right, or radio show. It's not a podcast. Excuse me. It's on Sirius XF. It's Sirius FM. He went on to talk about Javon Evans, and he went ahead and says and decides that there's no rush to push Javon Evans, right? There's no rush to push Javon Evans. He'll be ready. He'll enter his championship era in 15 years. All right. Now, there's another podcast out there that has started coining the phrase "underrated dumb guy" when it comes to people online or within the wrestling space who consistently have bad takes. Right? There's the dumb guys. Right? There are the dumb guys, and we know who they are, and we point and we laugh, we make fun of them. They're the butt of our jokes. Right? And then there's the underrated dumb guys, who don't get as much attention as the other dumb guys, but, who have a body of work to sustain the fact that they should be recognized as dumb guys, but somehow are underrated as a dumb guy. And Mark Henry is an underrated dumb guy. I have decided, after much thought and consultations, I didn't consult anyone, that Mark Henry is an underrated dumb guy, because this is a dude who consistently has god awful takes. And remember, this is the one that really does cement Mark Henry's dumb guyness. And I don't know if you recall, but last year when he received his his auto-mailed mailing list WWE card. You remember this? And he was so excited about getting it that he opened up the letter in the car after he got it out of his mailbox. He was in his car and he opened it up and he started getting all sentimental, saying, "This is what it means to be part of the family." And it's a fucking auto-mailer, mailing list bullshit, zero effort Christmas card, and he's tearing up just like as if fucking Triple H sent him a lock of his hair. He doesn't have hair anymore, but you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Boris. I was trying to remember, there was a term that he used, and that's exactly it. Classy company is what he called it, right? And I think like from that point on, I think it became obvious that he was an underrated dumb guy. Like only a dumb guy would react that way to receive, like it's the exact equivalent to receiving a card, a birthday card from your dentist, right? You get a birthday card from your dentist, which is just like, again, mailing list bullshit. And you get it because they want you to, hey, by the way, this is your reminder to book an appointment type of thing. And happy birthday, by the way. Or it's the other way around, right? It was more like, happy birthday. And oh, by the way, book an appointment. You need a teeth cleaning. You disgusting, foul-mouthed freak. And then you get the envelope and you start getting teary-eyed. You're like, oh, my dentist loves me. I must make her so much business. She's so sweet. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. But the real reason why I'm pulling this up, outside of having an opportunity to make fun at Mark Henry, Mark Henry, a guy who has a 20-year career in pro wrestling and was only relevant for about 18 of them, did anything good for about 18 months, I should say, within those 20 years. Most of that time there was spent making his boss laugh by doing, stupid shit on TV, while his boss was just trying to fire him because his boss had signed him to a 10-year contract and then had buyer's regret and didn't want to fire him because that meant that he'd still have to pay him some money. So he started humiliating him on TV, thinking, well, he'll probably hit the bricks, but he never did because Mark Henry is an underrated dumb guy who has quite possibly a humiliation fetish. Anywho, which is nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it. If you have a humiliation fetish, that is fine. And if you want to flaunt it in public, well, I will consume that. I will consume that type of content. It's for me. That's fine. It's okay. But outside of me wanting to make a little fun of Mark Henry, I did want to point out here that Mark Henry, being a dumb guy, is parroting a lot of the points that are going around in pro wrestling these days, where that pro wrestlers right now who are at the top of their game are all quite old, and the young guys and gals coming up, they are the promotions are very reticent to go ahead and push them. They're really fearful of taking a young guy and strapping a rocket to them, a guy or gal, okay, just to be clear, and strapping a rocket and just seeing where it takes us. For some reason, they're terrified of doing that. And I haven't figured out, well, I mean, I have theories. I mean, no one has told me exactly why, but no one is taking any risks. And we're going with, people in their late 30s, 40s, mid 40s to be people, with tip-top championships and whatnot. Meanwhile, you have young, exciting, charismatic, talented talent who are like Javon Evans, who you could easily just like, hey, you know what? Let's try something here. Let's push this guy to the moon. And you would have, you would be much more secure doing it with a guy like Javon Evans than you would another guy like, I don't know, Karrion Kross. It's like, it would be much safer to do that. But promotions in 2025 do not want to do that. They're afraid of doing it, despite the fact that, historically speaking, pushing new, fresh faces in wrestling promotions is typically a good way to get people interested in your promotion and rekindling some energy, finding something new to do. There's and for people who think that in 2025 it cannot work or whatever, there are two use cases that exist right now contemporary use cases right now, one being Pro Wrestling Noah with Ozawa and Stardom with Saya Kamitani, that prove that in both circumstances, when you turn around and you push fresh, young faces to be the top people in your company, next thing you know, you're making money. You're filling arenas. People are excited. They're talking about your product again. Isn't that interesting how it goes? And yet, some of the biggest promotions in the world, they cower at the thought of doing this kind of stuff. And quite frankly, if there was one company, one singular company on planet Earth right now who has all the leverage, all of the everything they need to be a little risky and try out a big push to a guy like Javon Evans, it's WWE. Like they are in the most comfortable position to try shit out, and they never fucking do. They never, ever do. They'll never do something as bold as this. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. And I've used the term before, and we'll use it again. It's because it's corporate boardroom creative. That's why. It's boardroom creative that drives this company. It's not truly creativity. It's not truly paying attention to fans. It's numbers and spreadsheets. That's all there is to it. That's what pushes creative directions in WWE. It's the boardroom. It's corporate decree as opposed to true creative. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there that, on one hand, all of this is, yes, let's make fun of Mark Henry. But on the other hand, it's sad because what he's pointing out is actually a problem, which also makes him a dumb guy. But this is actually something that is observable and probably a thinking point. Mark Henry probably heard this from someone backstage in WWE. Maybe he heard Bruce Pritchard talking about it. He said, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense, Bruce. Sexual chocolate. Remember that? Can you put me on TV? I'll go make out with people again. Remember that?" Ultimately, that's the main problem. It's not even like, Javon Evans shouldn't take it personally because of those specific comments. It's just something that exists in pro wrestling these days that we're adverse to risk, which is preposterous. Anyway, there's some Andrade news we have to go over, folks. We're going to read an article off of the Figure 4 online, and let's find out if Andrade is still stuck in wrestling hell. During an interview with Deportes, published on Wednesday, Andrade said, I just want to take a pause here real quick, because this Deportes stuff, I was like, I'd never heard of this. Okay. I was like, what is Deportes? What is Deportes? Being the, the King Gringo that I am. And I clicked on it. And then I'm like, I don't want to get copyright claimed here, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, holy shit. Wait a second. Like, this is like a real sports setup. Like, this is not like some dopey podcast. This is on TV Azteca. And you look at, you got the setup here and everyone's like matching colors. Like there's, matching the blue, the atmosphere here. And I'm like, fucking A. He was on like a legit, I have no idea, but I don't know what it is, but what it looks like, the vibe that I'm getting from it is like, okay, he was invited on a big time real deal sports show to come talk about his WWE contract situation and why he's not wrestling in AEW. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Good for him. Good for Andrade. And I watched it a bit obviously, because, I don't speak Spanish, but look at this guy. Look at how happy he is. Keeping It 100 podcast. This is not, no, no, recording out of Disco Inferno's stay over motel, long stay motel is what I wanted to say. It doesn't exactly cut it here. But I mean, look at this guy here. Would you look at this man's face? Is this not a man who is absolutely thrilled? Look how happy Andrade is. Look at that lid. Like, this is not a working smile. He is thrilled to the gills to be in this spot. And I'm looking at him and you know what? My heart started to unfreeze, started to thaw a little bit at the thought of Andrade now. A little bit. Just a little bit. But nonetheless, like, this guy, and he smiles the entire way. Like, he is in such a good mood. Well, that's not a good screenshot because he's talking, but look at this guy. And look at him. Look, he's looking at the co-host next to him, who's the lady, right? He's like, look at this fucking guy's face. Look at this guy's face. Look, he's looking straight at the lady. Good for him. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, where's the fucking article? Is it here? Okay. I'm a streamer. During an interview with Deportes. All right, excuse me. During an interview with Deportes, published on Wednesday, I think it's worse when I try to put on the accent. I think it's worse. I don't know how to pronounce this now without making myself laugh. Now here's the problem: is now I'm self-aware and I'm super judgmental of what I'm doing right now. During an interview with Mexican sports media published on Wednesday, Andrade said he is working with WWE on an agreement to get out of his 1-year non-compete clause with the company. He also said WWE only activated the clause after he appeared on AEW programming. Before then, Andrade believed he was completely free of his deal. My lawyers are already talking with WWE's lawyers and they're reaching an agreement. I don't know the exact date, Andrade said during the interview, which was translated from Spanish. Okay, why don't we break this down like from well, hang on. No, we'll read the whole thing. We'll do what we usually do. He also addressed his wellness policy violation in WWE that ultimately led to his departure. Quote, I got a warning because there are so many medicines or supplements in Mexico that you can use, but over there you can't. We'll come back to this one. Andrade's comments to the sports media show were addressed on Thursday's edition of Wrestling Observer Radio with our own Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, who mentioned that he'd been told WWE felt like activating Andrade's non-compete clause, was up to their discretion. So this is what Meltzer said about the interview. I would be very skeptical. I'm actually starting to talk like Dave now. I would be very skeptical of some of it. He basically said that his non-compete is worldwide and that he expects it to be settled in less than 3 months. And I was kind of told when this thing went down that they had the 1-year non-compete, but they probably weren't going to enforce it for the full year. They might. I think they felt it was up to their discretion. Meltzer added that he believes a WWE non-compete of this length would not hold up if Andrade took the matter to court. Here's another quote from Dave. If there was a court fight that was threatened, you would probably have to stop because there's no way that they could keep him from wrestling for a year and not pay him. And have the thing be worldwide, it could never hold up in court. But there's no indication he's taking them to court, but he is saying that they are in talks. His claim is that he didn't know that there was a non-compete when he went to AEW, that he was under the impression that there wasn't, and then when he went on, the WWE contacted him and said, hey, you're on a non-compete. Alvarez asked Meltzer if Tony Khan put Andrade on AEW programming without having him under contract. He may have signed a contract, for all we know, without the knowledge that he could sign a contract. This is such a goofy story. He obviously told Tony there was no non-compete. Meltzer answered. What a dopey ass story this is. Like, quite honestly. All right, let's break this down a little bit. So, first of all, we're just gonna go straight for this, okay? I got a warning in regards to the wellness policy. I got a warning because there are many medicines or supplements in Mexico that you can use, but over there, meaning the US, you can't, right? Or WWE. Oh, really? oh, you don't say that there are supplements or medicines that you can't, that are from Mexico, that are banned from use in the United States. Huh. Yeah. Gee willikers. That's a shame he didn't do his research properly, right? Started taking, these medicines. Started taking his medicines in Mexico, not knowing that he couldn't take the same medicines in the US. So it really makes you wonder, what the hell has he been taking? Look, I should have umbrellaed this with before getting into it. I should remind everyone that this is Andrade, okay? And he is a pro wrestler to the core. And he has no problem making shit up as he goes along. This is Andrade, right? So who knows exactly how true what he's saying here is? To be completely transparent. So the fact that he's saying, okay, let's just play devil's advocate and let's say this is true. Then I completely buy that he was bounced from WWE because of his wellness strikes. And remember, I think if I remember correctly, while we believe there was a wellness policy strike, it turns out there were multiple wellness policy strikes, right? If I'm not mistaken. So I can believe that this happened then, and then it sort of removes from the table, again, if this is true, it removes from the table the assumption that a lot of people had that maybe Andrade was on drugs, like straight up recreational drugs. And I'm not talking marijuana. That might be something that this comes to counter argument. Again, if this is true, because he could be just 100% bullshitting here. But I have a tendency to believe that he'd be using, supplements and stuff that are okay in Mexico that has laxer laws on all this stuff, right? And the sale of this and whatnot, that maybe is a little more regulated in the United States. I buy that. I buy that. If this is, again, if he's telling the truth. Of course, you could say, well, why wouldn't he be telling the truth? Well, because he's a pro wrestler and he's not going to come out. Otherwise, he's not going to come out and say, yeah, I busted, the wellness policy because, I've been doing Fent. He's not going to do that. He's not going to come out on Deportes. He's not going to come out on the media show, on the Mexican sports media show and say, yeah, I'm shooting up, I'm shooting up heroin and popping Molly before each match. That's not how it works. He's not going to do that. My lawyers are already talking with WWE's lawyers and they're reaching an agreement. That could 100% be bullshit, or it could be that it's the absolute truth. Like, there's really no way at this stage, there's really no way of knowing. But I feel like if he's going on television, even if it is in Mexico, I feel like if he's going on television to talk about this a little more openly, address some of the issues that got him fired in the first place, and then he's talking about it on a public forum like this, I would assume that there is some kind of resolution coming up or maybe that has already been settled, and he's just gonna go for it, right? Because otherwise, WWE could turn around and continue enforcing the 1 year non-compete if they really wanted to. I mean, look what they did to Ridge Holland when he went online and said, "Yeah, look, it kind of sucks. They're not taking care of me." And they're like, "Okay, fuck you. We're completely cutting you off now. Fuck your, fuck your severance pay and whatever, right?" This is how this company operates. This is how WWE operates. So maybe there is I would assume that at this point there's a deal that's been worked out. There's something that has happened, and WWE is going to relent on the 1 year non-compete, and then he's going to be able to go back to work, because there is, like Dave said, but we even said this at the start, there is no way a 1 year no compete clause holds up in any court in the United States of America. It does not stand up. And especially if it's a worldwide non-compete. This is the first we heard about this being a worldwide non-compete, right? If it's a worldwide non-compete for 1 year without receiving any pay from WWE, insane. That is crazy talk. It would not hold up in any court. So maybe he did have a lawyer reach out and say, well, we're going to take this to court. And the problem is that if it does go to court, if WWE does not want their contracts challenged, they will have to settle out of court for this. And they probably don't want to give Andrade any more money. So they're probably, their best outcome here is just to go, okay, yeah, you can go do your thing. It'll be less costly for them. It'll be less costly because it'll be less costly regardless of what happens. If they go to they settle out of court, is what I'm trying to say. If they settle out of court, they have to give Andrade money, and they already don't want to give him money, so they probably don't want to do that. And if they go full on with a trial and their contract gets exposed to the world, that's something they don't want. And they don't want their non-competes to be challenged in court because the non-competes cannot stand in court, and that will be torn apart. So they don't want that either. It's crazy that the wrestlers don't realize how much power they have over WWE in this circumstance. It's really kind of weird that they don't stand up to the company more because they don't want this information out. They just don't want it out. So, like Dave said here, he basically said his non-compete is worldwide and he expects it to be settled in less than 3 months. I would assume then that there's something that has been worked out. And I would assume probably at this point that WWE said, okay, look, we are going to shorten the deal and we'll just, instead of doing a year, we'll do the typical 90 days. And they both agreed to that. They shook hands or whatever, and they're ready to move on. And then Andrade, what is he doing? There's a very fair chance that all of that Andrade's doing here is creating a narrative around, he's just creating a narrative around his team going to bat for him and getting the results that he wanted. When in reality, maybe it's just WWE relenting and going, you know what, let's just do the 90 days and never speak of this again type of thing, right? That's all. It might not be even that complicated. It might not be even that complicated a situation. Because look, Tony Khan refused to talk about Andrade when he went on Ariel Helwani on an interview where he was saying, everyone is great. CM Punk is great. Cody Rhodes is great. Everyone's great. Well, Karrion Kross was not referred to as great, but that's something else. But in an interview where Tony Khan was just giving his opinion on everything, when Andrade was brought up, Khan was like, nope, I'm sorry, I cannot talk on this. I cannot speak on this at all because it's litigious. And now Andrade, he's going on TV in Mexico just talking about it, going like, yeah, 3 months should be up. My lawyers are kick ass. And all the goofy shit we take in Mexico to make us look big and plump. We can't do that in the US. It's wild shit. Like if this was a guy that was about to be embattled with a court case, he wouldn't be going on TV to say these things. He'd be laying low. He'd be shutting the fuck up, kind of like what Tony's doing. Tony's motive was, I am not saying anything because I don't want to mess anything up for Andrade. I'm just shutting up. That's all I'm doing. Which is a wise thing to do when there are legal proceedings going on, right? So, look, what I glean from this is that Andrade is probably going to be in AEW sooner than later. Much, much sooner than we expect. Was it his crack team of legal representation that was able to have WWE change their mind? Maybe. Again, WWE is not in a position of strength when it comes to their contracts on this level because they do not want their contracts being out there. They don't want these clauses being challenged. And AEW doesn't want either. Let's be honest. AEW does not want these independent contractors' contracts to be brought out into the open and challenged in court. The validity. I mean, AEW doesn't want that either, folks. Okay. So no one really wants that. Does that mean that, does that mean that this is the leverage that Andrade's lawyers used? Could be all along. WWE was like, look, we're going to enforce 90 days. Maybe not all along, but maybe, recently. We'll do 3 months. We'll do the typical 90 days and then you're free to do whatever the fuck you want. And maybe Andrade is just starting to take a very low-key victory lap here. I mean, good for him. Look, because, he should be able to work wherever the fuck he wants. But I will punctuate this. I will end this with one last thought. One that I've expressed before, and it bears repeating. This is all way too fucking complicated for a guy like Andrade. Like, this is the kind of shit that if you were bringing in, if AEW was bringing in a guy like Roman Reigns, or CM Punk somehow returning, then you're like, okay, well, I can understand that this is real torturous and twisty stuff because WWE, that was one of their top stars, and AEW and all of that. Then you can understand that it can get a little twisty and knotted, right? But this is fucking Andrade, Cien Almas, El Idolo, a guy who has bounced around from promotion to promotion for years now, a notorious discontent who has historically always ended his relationships with promotions on a sour note. Clearly not sour enough for that to keep Tony Khan from hiring him back after he spent months complaining about how he was being used on AEW on social media. This is a guy that is not worth the squeeze. He's not a draw. He's never been a draw. This was a guy that they had lined up to fight Kenny Omega. And as I said back in the day, a couple of months ago when we were first talking about this, Kenny Omega's time with us as a wrestler, as a performer, is more limited than ever. Why are we wasting some of Kenny Omega's precious last matches on Andrade Cien Almas? I still don't understand it. Good little wrestler, can be great when he wants to, but does not have the oomph, the gumption to justify the amount of headache that everything that comes with him justifies. That everything that comes with does not have does not let me say that again, does not have the standing in pro wrestling to justify all of the headaches that come with him. There you go. That was the line. But it's true. And I this is something I sincerely believe. Don't get me wrong. Good little wrestler. Well, more than a little wrestler. He's a good wrestler. He can be great sometimes when he wants, right? But he's a good wrestler. Well, let me tell you. Let me ask you a question. Like this is often the question that you have to ask when people start going off like on, oh, this wrestler's so great. This wrestler's so great. Why aren't they hiring him and so on and so forth? Then you ask him a question. One question. Okay, name me some of X's great matches. And when you talk about Andrade, you say, okay, what are some of Andrade's great matches? Oh, well, the NXT championship match against Johnny Gargano. Sure. And that's the one everyone always goes to, right? What else? Didn't he have a good one with Rey Mysterio on that one SmackDown when he came up? Yeah. Yes. You see what I mean? Like this guy's AEW has brought in bigger, better talent into this company without this much trouble, without this much issue. And especially when you consider that this is a guy who wanted out of this company so fucking bad. And now he comes back and is like, yeah, welcome back, bro. I still don't get it. I still don't understand. Anyway, nonetheless, like, let's not get the streams crossed here, because I think both can exist. I can be annoyed at the idea of Andrade, but I can also be very supportive of his right to be able to practice his craft and make a living out of it without unrealistic restrictions being placed upon the performance of his craft. Like, I am absolutely on his side when it comes to that. But holy shit, does this guy have baggage? Jesus Christ. WWE takes 0 PR hits in any of these scenarios because they dictate the media cycle. Of course they do. That's why no one's really talking about this, on a level of WWE being completely and ridiculously unfair in this situation. But hey, right? David Otunga had to bring that up. And then after, even when Otunga brought up the actual contract, we played the video here on stream a couple of weeks ago. He brings up his actual contract where he shows the 1-year non-compete clause, and people still say he's full of shit. And you're like, you're just not, at some point, you're never going to cure stupid. You're just not going to be able to cure stupid. And people want to believe whatever they want to believe, despite the facts being right under their nose, being right there. The one thing that I do want to talk about that's coming out of the WWE War Games San Diego, and this is more like, it's more like a rant, an op-ed. I don't know how to call this, but it led me to tweet this when I was thinking about it over the past couple of days. Not tweet, but post this on Blue Sky. Folks, do you remember when Becky Lynch was the coolest motherfucker in wrestling? Do you remember that? Because I do. I remember Becky Lynch being the hottest act in all of wrestling, the face of WWE, and on top of that, just being cool as hell. Where everything just worked, it just clicked, and you wanted more and more of that. You remember? I certainly remember. I even remember before she became the man, and how, she was just a natural babyface and she had the complete and total support of the audience. And this has been going on for years. And finally, when she's starting to gain momentum, they decide to do a heel turn and the audience straight up rejects it. Just an absolute bona fide rejection of her of that heel turn. They wanted to cheer for Becky. They did not want to cheer for Charlotte. But for WWE, especially for Vince at the time, Charlotte was the golden goose. It wasn't Becky Lynch and her dopey red hair and her dopey Irish accent. No. It was supposed to be Charlotte Flair, who was the queen of the queen of the company. I mean, that is her name, right? Her nickname. Not the queen of the company, but the queen. But I don't know what happened. Like, I can understand that wrestlers cool down. That's a natural thing that can happen. But usually when someone this hot needs to be downcycled or loses some of their heat or whatever, right? Typically speaking, you can heat them back up to what they were, but it's just not working with Becky anymore. And I kind of feel like she's working towards all of this not working for her anymore. Behold this. I'm sure you've seen this spot by now. I don't know if I can play it in its entirety without getting struck. But this is of course Io Sky's trash can spot, right? I don't even have to explain it anymore. She's been doing this for 17,000 years at this point. And somehow everyone gets really, really excited at the thought of Io Sky, despite the fact that we've seen this every fucking year since how many years has she been doing this? 4 years easily, right? Right? It has to be 4 years, if not more. But they have to do it every year now. And now they have to spray paint her logo on it. It's 5 years. This is the 5th year. She started doing this in 2020. All right. Now they spray paint the logo on it. Because it has to, right? Because it's WWE, the most inauthentic shit you can find on television today. All right? The absolute most inauthentic stuff that you can see. So outside of the fact that, this is a spot that she's been doing every year for 5 years, and it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. These WWE weirdos, right? The WWE TikTok, they don't care. They're still super excited about it. They want to see this happen. So she does it, right? She does the whole thing, right? And I think, is it a moonsault she usually does? Or does she just dive? Who cares? Now it lands, of course, does the thing. But here's what annoys me. Here's what grinds my gears here. We've got Becky Lynch right there, right? And Becky Lynch, who has been wrestling for, it has to be 20 years at this point, or close to. She's a double-decade veteran of professional wrestling, someone that you absolutely believe has seen it all, right? And who has seen this War Games moonsault with the trash can a couple of times, somehow gets completely stun-locked. Look at the length of this. Look at the length. Look. Did you see how long that was? From the moment it lands. Okay, let's say here. Let's be generous. 39 seconds is right down here. It lasts easily. She's standing there like a goof for 12 seconds. Don't get me started here on Rhea Ripley doing the fucking head point bullshit. But everyone's just standing there going, oh my God. And Becky Lynch is standing there like an absolute dope. What did I just see? There was a time Becky Lynch would have taken this opportunity right here of this, this goober cheering for the stunt that she just did, and she would have mounted her and started, beating the piss out of her. Just laying down rights directly onto her face. There was a time Becky Lynch would have done that, but instead, it's like, oh, wait a second. Oh no, what just happened? This is, yes, wrestling requires a certain amount of suspension of disbelief. But in this circumstance here, I cannot do that. I cannot suspend my disbelief because my belief here, the thing that I'm required to believe is that these two teams want to pummel the absolute hell out of each other so that they can win a wrestling match. I am not getting that vibe from this. This is a seasoned veteran, someone who is considered to be like a legit, for a long time. Some people called her the female Stone Cold. I'd be stretching a little bit, but bear with me here. And she's standing there going, mouth agape, not being unable to move. Now, do you think that heel Stone Cold would have stood there, hands on top of his bald head, staring down going, well, goddamn, son, I don't know what just happened here. I hate this so much, but we're not done. Let's keep this going. We're not done here. Later in this match or before, I don't care. Look at this. But look at this. She's being pressed up against the cage. What is she doing? What is this? What is this selling? Becky! This is inexcusable for someone who has been doing this for as long as she has. What is she doing? And the foot press that is on her cheek is the softest foot press. There's no pressure. There's no pressure. There's no pressure here. What is this selling? Why is Becky Lynch selling like dog shit? Then again, this isn't the first time this year that we've seen Becky Lynch sell like complete and utter garbage. Y'all remember this one? Now, granted, this move stinks. The AJ Lee windmill shit, absolute garbage. Don't get me wrong. But look at how Becky Lynch, we've talked about this before because I was so stunned at how bad her selling was. I got to show this again because this is what we're talking about. Her selling in the cage with the Charlotte shoe pressed gently on her face. This shit, her being stun locked. I thought I had saved something else. Hang on a second. Let's go to the figure 4 online. There. And then she's running this angle where she's denying to show up on WWE Raw until my title is returned to me. Carr is suspended. I don't know who that is. Jessica Carr, right? That's the referee. And an apology is issued. What is this geek behavior? The fuck is all of this? I believe that there is someone who just didn't like Becky and decided to go down this route, but this is not necessarily anything new. All of these things that I pointed out are not necessarily new things. It's just stuff that is just coming together now. It's just stuff that's coming together into such a small amount of time that now we're getting a perspective that we didn't have before. And that is that Becky Lynch is not even, she's a geek, okay? She's a geek now. She's not even remotely close to being a fraction of how cool she used to be in that period where she became iconic, where people made stickers and t-shirts of her bloodied face, right? I have one. I have one of those iconic t-shirts. I immediately bought one because I was sitting there. I was like, this is the greatest organic creation of a wrestling star that I have seen in years. And everything it just melted away. And yes, we talked about it on the last stream. Yes, you can absolutely point to the start of her reign after the WrestleMania main event when she had to feud with Lacey Evans, which was complete dog shit and something that was absolutely beneath her. They throw her into that feud and she was never able to rise above it. Now, was this a test to see if she could? Did she have the star power, the capability, the gumption to rise above being saddled with Lacey Evans? Maybe this was a test by Vince. You don't know. You never know. If it was, she failed. She 100% absolutely just came undone. It did not work out for her. It's fascinating to me how far this person has fallen and how uncool she has become. Even when she was babyface not that long ago, it still wasn't as cool. It just isn't. Because all the things that she's doing here as a heel are so larger than life, are bigger and stick with you more because of how terrible they are. There was a time she was wearing goofy suits like her geek boyfriend, right? Husband. She was wearing the goofy outfits as well. This is all shit that when you want to turn around and become the man again, and wear your tight leather pants and come out with the man t-shirt with the cut off sleeves, that doesn't jive anymore. Then people will be like, people will see right through it. Even the WWE TikTok people will see right through it. That's how bad it is. They'll see that it's phony. They'll see that it's contrived. They're not going to support that kind of shit. Why would they? It's bad. I think it was last week on my Dynamite review, I mentioned the idea of Samoa Joe running away from a fight, if I remember correctly. I think Samoa Joe was running away from a fight, right? Yeah, that's it. When Swerve and Hangman were coming to the ring on Dynamite, and then he hit the bricks. And I said very mildly in my review that I didn't care for it, and it doesn't make sense to me that a guy like Joe, even though he's a heel, a guy whose entire persona, his entire thing is, I am a legitimate, credible badass, and I will destroy you in a second, right? I will destroy you in a second. Why would he be running? Now, I understand the heel face dynamic, so you don't have to explain that to me. But I don't think Samoa Joe running from a fight is necessarily the best way to go about it either. Going to cower with his friends at the top and whatnot. And I said, I don't like it, and this is the kind of stuff that worries me. You can be a heel without being cowardly. And I kind of feel like this is always I feel like every heel now in 2025, that's their default setting. When the going gets tough, they hit the bricks, they hide behind their stable or, other jabronis that they might have brought around for the occasion, whatever. That's always the thing. And to me, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a guy like Joe to be doing that. A guy like Samoa Joe is scary. He's dominant. And if he's taken a powder at the slightest sign of trouble, when there are literally like a dozen guys there to take care of two dudes, I don't know. Again, I understand the heel babyface dynamics here. The idea is for the babyfaces to look strong, so they're taking out, 10 guys or whatever. I understand. Even though they're outnumbered, the babyfaces will prevail. But Jesus Christ, I think there are better ways to do this. And I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that this is unfortunately what's happened to Becky. Because, as you may remember a couple of weeks ago, I reviewed that so-called match of the year that Becky Lynch and Maxine Dupree had with each other from a Monday Night Raw thing where Becky was counted out and Maxine Dupree won, and people were unironically calling this a match of the year. And, if you recall my thoughts and my criticism on it, I said that if anything, this match was the best Becky Lynch performance that I had seen in a long, long time, because she commandeered this match. She was a true to form ring general, and her heel work was outstanding. She was great in this match with, Maxine Dupree with the sack of twigs. That was my main takeaway. So it's not as if Becky is washed. It's not as if she can't do this anymore. I look, somehow, like, this is the creative that they have for her. This is the best that they have for Becky Lynch. And it's extremely sad. It's extremely sad. And it's, to me, completely tainted her legacy. She could have been something much more commanding at this point in her professional wrestling career. But WWE's got a WWE it, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here going poor Becky either, okay? I'm not sitting here lamenting, oh, Becky, poor you. Becky had opportunities to hit the bricks from this company. She had multiple opportunities to pick up and leave, and she decided to re-sign every single time. All right, that's all I need to know. She's completely okay with what's going on, and that makes me uninterested. That makes me completely uninterested. Because if she had shown signs that she was, she would have tried anything else. And I'm not necessarily saying go to AEW. Anything else, that she would have wanted to try anything else. But she didn't. She stuck around for whatever reasons. Look, she's making good money. Her and her geek husband, they're making tremendous money, buying their fleet of Cybertrucks. I mean, you got to be making some good cash here. So good for her. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to shed a tear for Becky Lynch. Not anymore. There may have been a time. Where I would have thought it to be unjust, unfair, but I can't want it more than they do. I cannot want more, a better position for a wrestler as far as their booking, their legacy goes. I can't want it more than the wrestler wants it themselves. It's the Shinsuke Nakamura conversation all over again that we had just not that long ago, where people still go, man, Shinsuke, WWE, if they could only use him better. I feel bad for Shinsuke. I don't. Shinsuke Nakamura has been with that company since 2017. He has had multiple opportunities to hit the bricks, and he didn't. He's fine. Who cares what I want at this point? What I want, I would have loved to see Shinsuke Nakamura free once again, going to play the Legends bit in Japan. I would have loved that. 2015. Thank you for the correction, chat. I would have loved to see this. Of course, the whole saga with the Tanahashi match, which we're going to talk about in a second or two. I would have loved for him to break away from this company that, doesn't know how to use him, that has no real plans for him, that'll just pull him out so he can be a challenger of the week and then put him back into the mothballs for 9 months. But he's resigned. This is another guy. He resigned every single time. I have no use for him. No pity. He can go do whatever the fuck he wants in WWE, of course. I don't care. And I cannot care more than they do. I honestly cannot. Not when they resign every time. Just like Becky. I was one of the... I was so vocal about my enthusiasm and appreciation and respect for Becky Lynch at the time, and how she truly was like a kind of a voice of the voiceless thing, right? Where she had risen up against all odds to finally be hoisted in a spot where people wanted her to be in. And then it got even bigger. She gets knocked in the face, and it just like snowballs into being the biggest wrestler in the world, you know? And now it's just like, she's just someone else. She's just someone who, once she retires and gets her nice little Hall of Fame, her Legends deal, excuse me. They're gonna make sure that all the history is extremely positive, and WWE controls all the narrative, so people will buy it hook, line, and sinker. But for those of us who lived it in real time, it will not be good. It will not be good. But there you go. Becky Lynch, from Great to Geek. That's the name of the segment. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you all very much for being here. If you liked it, again, you know what to do and all that stuff. It's fine. You don't need me to go over it again. Or do you? No, you don't, because you're smart. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday, with an AEW Dynamite review, of course, and later on in the evening, a stream where we're going to be previewing the Ring of Honor show this weekend. Did you know there's a Ring of Honor show happening this weekend? The Final Battle, it's happening this weekend. I didn't know if you knew that. I barely knew. And we're going to be previewing that tomorrow on stream. So if you want to hop in and get hyped up for a show you probably didn't know was happening, I'm your Huckleberry. I'm right there for you. So look, that's about it for now. Otherwise, we'll be back next week with more streams and more Mr. Warren Hayes podcasts and all that stuff. So thank you all so very much for being here. Go watch some Randy Orton and get back to me, and I will see you next time.